Analysis: F-35 versus Chinese 5th-gen stealth. As the US starts to forward deploy more of its F-35 Lightning, China and Russia have been putting the finishing touches on their own batches of 5th-generation aircraft, and they all express vastly different ideas about what the future of air combat will look like. For the US, stealth and sophisticated networks define its vision for the future of air combat with the F-22 and F-35. For China, the plan is to use range to take out high-value targets with the J-20. For Russia, the PAC-4 shows that it seems to think dogfighting isn't dead. Here's how the F-35 stacks up to the competition. The F-35 Lightning II and F-35B begins its short takeoff from the USS America with an external weapons load. Lockheed Martin: the US's F-35 isn't an airplane, it's 3 airplanes. And it isn't a fighter, it's flying sensor shooters that have the ability to act as information nodes in a combat cloud universe made up of platforms, not just airborne, but also operating at sea and on land that can be networked together, retired US Air Force Lieutenant General David Dipchua told Defense and Aerospace Report in November. In a discussion with 4 F-35 pilots that was also produced by Defense and Aerospace Report, a clear consensus emerged. The difference between an F-35 and an F-15 is like the difference between an iPhone and a corded wall phone. Phones of the past might have had crystal clear call quality and the ability to conference call, but the iPhone brought with it unprecedented networking and computing capability that has changed life as we know it. Lieutenant Col David Chip Burke, a former F-35 squadron commander, told Business Insider that we don't even know 50-80% of what this airplane can do, as it's awaiting final software upgrades and pilots are finding new ways to use the data link and fuse sensors. That said, the F-35 doesn't offer any significant upgrades in range, weapons payload, or dogfighting ability over legacy aircraft, while its competition does. Malcolm Davis, a senior analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, told Business Insider that the J-20 is not a fighter, but an interceptor and a strike aircraft that doesn't seek to contend with us jets in air-to-air battles. Instead, the Chinese are recognizing they can attack critical airborne support systems like AWACS, airborne early warning and control systems, and refueling planes so they can't do their job, Davis said. If you can force the tankers back, then the F-35s and other platforms aren't sufficient because they can't reach their target. While the Chinese certainly engaged in espionage to steal some of the US's stealth technology, they haven't quite cracked stealth integration, which his companies have been developing for 60 years. On the J-20's stealth, a senior slow observable aircraft design engineer working in the industry told Business Insider that the J-20 has many features copied from US 5th-gen aircraft. However, it's apparent from looking at many pictures of the aircraft that the designers don't fully understand all the concepts of low observable or stealth design. The real danger of China's J-20 lies not with its ability to fight against us fighters, but with its laser-like focus on destroying the slower, unarmed planes that support us fighters with its long-range and long-range missiles, thereby keeping them out of fighting range. China's J-31 looks a lot like the F-35, and one Chinese national has pleaded guilty to stealing confidential information about the F-35 program. That said, the J-31 suffers from China's inferior composite materials technology and its inability to build planes in the precise way a stealth airplane needs to be built. Additionally, there's reason to suspect the avionics in the Chinese program significantly lag the F-35. But the J-31, like the J-20, still poses a significant threat because China has developed long-range missiles, which combined with their ground radars and radar sites in the South China Sea could potentially pick off a stealth aircraft before the F-35s and F-22s could fire back. Davis told Business Insider that the J-31 doesn't just seek to compete with the US militarily, but that the J-31 very clearly is an F-35 competitor in a commercial sense. Nations that weren't invited to participate in the F-35 program may seek to buy China's cheaper and somewhat comparable J-31. A fleet of J-31s in the hands of Iran, for example, could pose a serious threat to US interests abroad. Smart skins with distributed electronics means that instead of having systems mounted on the aircraft, you would have apertures integrated on the skin of the aircraft, analysts have said. Fighter jets in 20 years may likely contain the next generation of stealth technology, electronic warfare, sophisticated computer processing and algorithms, increased autonomy, hypersonic weapons and so-called smart skins where sensors are built into the side of the aircraft itself. Some of these characteristics may have been on display earlier this year when Northrop Grumman Super Bowl AD revealed a flashy first look at its rendering of a new 6th-generation fighter jet. Northrop is one of a number of major defense industry manufacturers who will bid for a contract to build the new plane. When the time is right, the new aircraft, engineered to succeed the 5th-generation F-35 Joint Strike Fighter and explode onto the scene by the mid-2030s, is now in the earliest stages of conceptual development with the Air Force and Navy. The two services are now working together on early conceptual discussions about the types of technologies and capabilities the aircraft will contain. While the Air Force has not yet identified a platform for the new aircraft, the Navy's new aircraft will, at least in part, replace the existing inventory of F/A-18 Super Hornets, which will start to retire by 2035. Navy officials said the Navy vision for a future carrier air wing in 2040 and beyond is comprised of the carrier-launched variant of the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35C, and legacy aircraft such as the AR-18G Growler electronic jamming aircraft. Also, around this time is when Navy planners envision its 6th-generation aircraft to be ready, an aircraft which will likely be engineered for both manned and unmanned missions. Technologies are rapidly advancing in coatings, electromagnetic spectrum issues, maneuvering, superiority in sensing the battle space, communications and data links, Navy leaders have said. Navy officials also add that the Navy is likely to develop new carrier-launched unmanned air vehicles in coming years as well. Analysts have speculated that as 6th-generation developers seek to engineer a 6th-generation aircraft, they will likely explore a range of next-generation technologies such as maximum sensor connectivity, supercruisability, and an aircraft with electronically configured smart skins. Maximum connectivity would mean massively increased communications and sensor technology such as having an ability to achieve real-time connectivity with satellites, other aircraft, and anything that could provide relevant battlefield information. The new aircraft might also seek to develop the ability to fire hypersonic weapons. However, such a development would hinge upon successful progress with yet to be proven technologies such as scramjets traveling at hypersonic speeds. Some tests of early renderings of this technology have been tested successfully, and yet other attempts have failed. Supercruise technology would enable the new fighter jet to cruise at supersonic speeds without needing afterburner, analysts have explained. Smart aircraft skins would involve dispersing certain technologies or sensors across the fuselage and further integrating them into the aircraft itself, using next-generation computer algorithms to organize and display information for the pilot. Smart skins with distributed electronics means that instead of having systems mounted on the aircraft, you would have apertures integrated on the skin of the aircraft, analysts have said. This could reduce drag, increase speed and maneuverability while increasing the technological ability of the sensors. It is also possible that the new 6th-generation fighter could use advanced, futuristic stealth technology able to enable newer, more capable air defenses. The air defenses of potential adversaries are increasingly using faster computing processing power and are better networked together, more digital, able to detect a wider range of frequencies and able to detect stealthy aircraft at farther distances. The new 6th-generation fighter will also likely fire lasers and have the ability to launch offensive electronic attacks.